if you're not self-regulated, whether that's simple things like prayer or meditation or breathing exercises or journaling or taking a brisk walk, if you don't allow yourself and your nervous system to calm down, and thankfully we have tools right now that we can sort of navigate this. It doesn't have to be so difficult and so hard. There's a lot of content out there. You can even ask AI to help you regulate some of your non-regulation activities. So that's number one. If you get a stem cell transplant, they have to put you in quarantine room because you can be susceptible to infections. What did I have there, Natalie? I had two things that no one could take away from me. I had silence and I had stillness. They were so powerful. I was able to actually separate what they call psychological distancing between my pain, my discomfort, and the person that I knew that I could maybe perhaps get through this.
Welcome to the Leadership That Shines podcast, the weekly leadership training show that's built around 3 values that show up in everything we do: impact, influence, and growth. Whether you're leading a team, building a business, or learning to lead yourself first, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Natalie Davis. Let's get into it. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Leadership That Shines podcast. As you all know, our podcast and the company Leadership That Shines focuses on impact, influences, and growth as the foundation of everything that we do. And I am so honored and excited because we have a guest today that is not only an individual that has had phenomenal impact and continues to have phenomenal impact, but has their own personal story as it pertains to growth and influence across many, many industries, not industry specific. Joining me, of course, is Savio. Savio, welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you?
Natalie, your personality is infectious, and thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to literally dig in and dive in on what we need to talk about. So it's exciting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are just people that you connect or meet and connect with, and it's like immediate, yes, absolutely. No questions. Let's make it happen. And Savio, you're that person. And we had some time to connect offline before getting on and recording this episode. You have a phenomenal story. And so I first want to just give you a moment to share with the listeners a little bit about your background, because you are a journalist that has had an opportunity to talk to many individuals about leadership, watching their leadership skills and qualities evolve, grow. They've shared that with you. You're also a speaker. You are also a cancer survivor. So life has been a journey for you. Why don't you share with our listeners a little bit about your background before we dive into our leadership lessons for today?
Yeah. Well, Natalie, thank you for that introduction. So I don't want to make this too credential heavy, but yes, I am a TEDx speaker. I'm also a keynote speaker, board certified wellness coach. I am a bestselling author, a journalist. At this point, I've interviewed, like you said, thousands. At this point, I think it's 2,500 leaders, thought leaders, experts, change makers in the fields of resilience, human behavior, thought leadership. And I am a 2-time cancer survivor. So I initially had cancer in 2014. I was in remission for a decade. And then in June of 2024, I had a relapse and I went through 16 months of treatment. And fortunately, through the miracle of modern medicine and a bunch of integrated modalities, because I believe wholeheartedly in wellness as a balance, yes, I am in complete response to that treatment. So I'm here, I'm living, I'm a testament to what I preach, do, and who I want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Savio, this background that you've had in terms of your professional career, I know we jokingly said we may go there. I'd love to hear. As a child, what did you want to do when you grew up? Like, when you answered that question, what do you want to do when you grow up? What was that answer for you?
Well, it's interesting that the Artemis is in space right now. Believe it or not, I wanted to be an astronaut. I researched, I remember clearly researching it. Well, back then it was encyclopedias, okay? I'm dating myself, but we had thick encyclopedias. Mm-hmm. And I remember saying to myself, oh, I actually can do this because I have 20/20 vision. I had 20/20 vision back then. Everyone in my family had glasses. I had no glasses. Yeah. And you know, I had the desire, I had the interest. And then the Challenger explosion happened back in the 80s. And I was like, I don't think that I'm going to put my life on the line like that. And so I diverted to something that was actually very interesting, very innate in me. I always knew it would be something with computers. I forced my parents to get me the latest game. Back then it was only Nintendo, let's face it. But
Right.
and then Sega came out. And I was very good at it. I studied computer science and business administration in college. I was part of the dot-com boom. I mean, they were paying us left and right. I mean, exorbitant amounts of money for just coming out of college. But then I was also, unfortunately, a casualty of the dot-com crash and part of the pink slip. They used to call it pink slip parties, if any listener knows. That was a huge deal. We would gather, and it was basically schmoozing. I don't think any transactional resumes were actually happening, but they were. But yeah, that was really something that I knew, and I was good at it, and I did it for many, 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 many years. And then I pivoted, and then I made a massive pivot because of the cancer itself.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about that in terms of diagnosis and that running parallel with your career, right? As you find yourself at this crossroads, both from a personal and professional standpoint.
Yeah. So after my many stints in the dot-com and also the startup world, I formed a production company with 3 other individuals. Let's just say it didn't go so well. It was a passion project. I put a lot of my own time, energy, and resources financially into it, and it just didn't fulfill me. It didn't really go anywhere, but I'm glad I tried it because it taught me a lot about what do you give to an endeavor, and what is it that comes out of that endeavor that you align with. And I don't think I was aligning well with it, and unfortunately, the ending of that dovetailed to the first time I had cancer. So it was 2014, and I came back from a trip with a friend to Amsterdam, Paris, and London, and I noticed that I was having drenching night sweats. I'm like, well, this is odd. I'm in Europe. I'm like, it's not like it's warm climate.
Yeah.
Came back and I noticed that I was having drenching nights. When I mean drenching night sweats, I mean soaked sheets, soaked pillowcases, and then I noticed my stomach started getting distended bigger and bigger. And at that point in time, I was only seeing a naturopath. So a naturopath is just someone who analyzes your blood, and he actually tells you what diet structures to take, what foods to eat. Not that I didn't see doctors, but I just didn't have a need to see doctors. I was someone who didn't even take aspirin if I had a headache. I just kind of did what I needed to do. And he goes, Savio, he's like, there's a few things, I don't want to alarm you. It could be like 3 different things here, but I want you to go to mainstream medicine. I'm like, okay. He's like, do a sonogram. I'm like, doc, a sonogram? He's like, yeah. So I did a sonogram. They wouldn't let me leave the office for an hour and a half. And they came out of the office and they said to me, you need to get a relative to come pick you up or a friend and drive you to the hospital. I'm like, but I have my car here. They're like, no, you need to come. You need to have a relative come take you to the hospital. My dad came, took me to the hospital. An hour and a half later, they transferred me and admitted me to the 5th floor. And then later that night, I heard rumblings from the nurses saying I would be transferred to what they called the cancer floor, which was the 7th floor. So I had an inkling that it was cancer. I didn't know what kind. I was told a day and a half later it was stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's a blood cancer. Nobody in both sides of my family had cancer or a blood cancer at that point. Right. And so I was bedridden for a week because they had to put a nephrostomy tube and they had to distill about 8 liters of food from my abdomen. So I had ascites, and inside the ascites was the lymphoma. And 2 days before I left, so I was in the hospital for an additional 7 days, the medical director came and she said to me, Savio, we know about your medical history in terms of, you're healthy, you eat right, you don't take any medications, but you need to start your first round of chemo. And that time they would administer something called R-CHOP, chemotherapy. One of the drugs is called Red Devil for a reason, because it's a very harsh chemo. So I got the first round, and then I left the hospital after 15 days, and then I got an additional 5 rounds. And in 4.5 months, I received my remission status. It was about 5 days before Christmas. Best Christmas present I could ever have.
Absolutely.
And I was fine for a decade.
Wow. Thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate that, Savio. And going a day and a half without even knowing what's going on, like not getting a diagnosis, but yet there's the buzz of all of the people around you. Just from a mindset place, where were you? Tell me about that piece for yourself.
I'm the type of person, and I think it was the fact that, so I grew up Catholic, so I had a strong foundation. I was even an altar boy in elementary school. But in college, in the 90s, I knew that I wanted to explore other belief systems. So I studied everything from Buddhism to Vedic philosophy. I was just curious. I was like voracious. I was like, there has to be truth among all these. There can't just be a singular truth. And so I studied it. So I knew that what was happening to me was just something that happens to a lot of us. Yeah. A boulder gets in our way, as Oprah called it. A schism happens. Someone leaves us. We have a medical malady. Whatever happens, I knew that I had to face it and not pretend it wasn't existing. And so even though I was scared, honestly, Natalie, I wasn't scared of dying. I was more scared of that I didn't live, that I didn't do what I came here to do, even though none of us really know what that is.
Don't know. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
And so that was the most, the part that was really hard for me. It was the fact that people relied on me, that I had responsibilities in the world, and that I would let them down and also let myself down. That was the pervasive and pervading thing that was entering my mind. It wasn't really about the fear aspect, so much so.
Yeah, absolutely. So 10 years in remission, fast forward 10 years later, where are you and what happens with this next diagnosis?
Well, interestingly enough, I came back from another trip and people were like, well, you shouldn't go on any trips now.
I did. Let's not remove travel. No, we're going to continue to keep travel on.
Yeah. So I did a media visit. I did a media visit to India. So they allowed me to visit 8 cities in India, which I haven't been to India in 26 years. My background is Indian, but I have not been to India in like 26 years. I did 8 cities. Oh, beautiful, gorgeous. And I did 2 weeks. My parents, they leave the state of New York and they go to India because they can't stand the cold winters. And so I spent an additional 2 weeks there. And when I came, and I was noticing before my trip, I was noticing some ear fullness, some nasal stuffiness, but I didn't make much of it. Then I went to India and it was so hot that I ended up getting a nosebleed one day. And then, I don't know, it just was very uncomfortable. But I enjoyed the 8 other cities there. My parents are from Goa, India. It was ruled by the Portuguese. So when people look at me, they're often confused. They're like, you look Indian, but you look Hispanic. Your name is Hispanic. It's because it was ruled by the Portuguese for 400 years until the late 60s. In any event, I came back and I would see my oncologist every year, although this was a new oncologist. The other oncologist left. He retired. And I came back from my trip and I saw my yearly blood work. And he's like, Mr. Clemente, you're good. I'll see you next year. They told me after 5 years I didn't have to come see them, but they're like, we love you, but we don't, you don't have to. I'm like, no, I want to. It actually would allow me to feel a lot better about my life and my circumstances. Yes. So he's like, oh, I'll see you next year. I'm like, oh, well, by the way, Dr. Steinberg, I have noticed like just nasal congestion and ear fullness. I'm going to go and to see my ENT in the city. He's like, okay. He's like, just, tell him to send the stuff. We'll put you in your file. I'll see you next year. I'm like, okay. I go to the city and the ENT goes, Savio, there's a lot of inflammation in your right nostril. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you're a B-cell lymphoma survivor, right? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, do you know B-cells can live in the nasal cavity? I'm like, what? I'm thinking, Natalie, that I'm going there for nasal medication. I didn't even think about cancer. They didn't even enter my mind. Yes. Because I got this good, you're okay, Savio type of thing for, the blood cancer. And he goes, and I'll always remember this. He goes, I've been burned as a doctor before, so let's not make that happen. He's like, let's do an MRI. He did an MRI. He looked, that looks weird. So he did a biopsy, and literally Friday at 3 p.m., the day before my 25th college reunion with people that I was emailing that I haven't seen in 25 years, I did not have the stamina, the muster, or even the courage to do that. Because what am I going to do, fake it? I just found out I had a relapse of cancer. Yeah. And I knew, because I saw my oncologist that Monday, a couple days later, when he took an hour and a half and explained to me the comprehensive treatment plan for relapse, as they call it, a refractory aspect of lymphoma. It included, I'll just tell you briefly, it included 2 3-day stays in the hospital, a neck catheter where they had to harvest my own stem cells. It included injecting myself for a week or two in order to stimulate those. 29 days in the hospital. Typically it's 21, but I ended up having tachycardia. So every time I would stand up, my pulse would go to like 160, 170. So much so one night they had to send me to the ICU to get norepinephrine. Then I came out of the hospital. Then they did scans and they said you are in complete response to treatment. And so my doctor's like, there's a clinical trial. You don't have to do it, but it's an insurance policy. My sister's like, why would you want to go and do additional 4 or 5 months of treatment when they just told you you're basically cancer free again? I'm like, because if I don't do it, then and it comes back, I have a regret, right? I didn't do the full protocol. I didn't do what was available to me. Mm-hmm. And so I did that for 4.5 months. And then I did 5 months of physical therapy. And I'm here to speak with you today.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, congratulations again. I mean, that's when you have kind of the wind taken out of your sail in those moments, right? Like you're just continuing on with life. It's life as usual. And then you have that moment of pause. And you know, I'm not going to fake it. I've been here before. I know what it takes to carry myself through this process. And I know how I'm going to be able to show up for other people too, right? Like that's the big piece is how can I show up for other people?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that informs what I do today, which is most people think leadership is about surviving the crisis, but no, it's about what happens after the crisis when your old operating system doesn't work, but your performance still needs to continue. How do you reconcile that? How do you move forward with that? Because most people, especially in leadership circles, especially in healthcare leadership, which is my lane, they think that, okay, we made it through the crisis, things are fine. But no, that's when you start losing because parts of you are gone. You can reclaim things, but you can never get back. There's no such thing as the new normal. I mean, there is something as the next step, but the new normal is because it still posits the fact that you still want normalcy, but it's not. It's just a new way of being. And believe it or not, which I didn't know when I left the hospital, after you get your stem cells, because your bone marrow is completely depleted, they actually count the days after. So you actually get another birth date. So the day I got my stem cell, and I was like, I thought they were like giving me some woo-woo thing because, you know, they know that. I'm like, they're like, no, this is not a woo-woo thing. This is an actual medical rebirth. You actually are considered medically reborn. He's like, you have a second birth date. And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, so now I'm like, I get 2 presents, one in the winter and one in the summer.
Perfect. That way no one forgets. No one's going to forget it.
No one forgets it.
I love that. I love that. Well, Savio, you started to take us down this path. In all of the interviews that you've conducted, you've had the opportunity to speak with some phenomenal leaders through your career, and you have been able to identify what it looks like, as you touched on, like when we're leading under pressure, when things are starting to fall apart, when you're trying to keep your team motivated and inspired. And I've done a couple of videos and discussions and blogs on this exact topic, like leading under pressure and the leader that shows up in those moments. And it takes a lot to truly be honest with yourself. And I've taken that moment to realize I am a completely different leader when stakes are high, when the pressure is high, when there's a lot on the line. I show up as a completely different person. I ran a parallel that is kind of a lot of the traits that tend to pop up when I'm leading under pressure also are the same traits that pop up when I'm hangry, but we're going to leave that for a different discussion in another day. Talk to us a little bit about the things that you've observed, witnessed, learned, documented from these leadership conversations for individuals that are leading through high pressure, high stake, challenging situations.
Well, like I mentioned, my lane is healthcare leadership. Right now, I'm running a series with CEOs and CMOs. You can't get more high stakes than that, especially not only with CEOs dealing with the financial aspects of a business, but I'm talking about CMOs who deal with real humans. The high stakes are not only about themselves and their organization, but about another human being. I mean, that's a lot of pressure, and it's a silent pressure, and it's like a silent nagging that sort of pervasive that doesn't go away. And so for me, I always say, like you said, I echo the same sentiment. It always starts with the individual. So if you don't self-regulate yourself, the game over. Because at the end of the day, what is a leader? A leader doesn't always have to be this corporate setting with a suit. A leader is just someone people want to emulate, people want to embody, people want to follow, people want to see themselves in, people want to find a joining of like minds. That's what a leader really is. And so if you're not self-regulated, whether that's simple things like prayer or meditation or breathing exercises or journaling or taking a brisk walk, if you don't allow yourself and your nervous system to calm down, and thankfully we have tools right now that we can sort of navigate this. It doesn't have to be so difficult and so hard. There's a lot of content out there. You can even ask AI to help you regulate some of your non-regulation activities. So that's number one. Number two is really what really taught me really, really well in the experience I had 29 days in the hospital, and what was so easily available to me, because I was in a quarantine room. If you get a stem cell transplant, they have to put you in quarantine room because you can be susceptible to infections. And so what did I have there, Natalie? I had two things that no one could take away from me. I had what? Silence, and I had stillness. They were so powerful because in those moments, I was able to actually separate what they call psychological distancing between my pain, my discomfort, and the person that I knew that I could maybe perhaps get through this. Somehow I could find and reclaim what was taken away from me, or what feels like a huge, huge burden for me. And before I get in trouble with psychologists, and I'm not talking about disconnection, or I'm not talking about disassociation. I'm talking about psychological distancing, just that little buffer, which is very important. And then the other thing, which was really surprising to me as well, is that I learned in those moments, even though I've been a long-time meditator for over 20 years, we were first taught back in the days that intelligence was the number one quality to have. Then we were like, no. Emotional intelligence, yes, that's the one. Yes. But actually the science and the research points to metacognition. Now, what's metacognition? It's the thinking of the thinking. So that space, that buffer that I received through the pain and the discomfort that I was in, allowed me to actually realize, who is conscious? Who is me in this moment? Who is me tied to these machines? Who is me that they come every 4 hours? You know, when the doctors would do their rounds and it was random times during the day, I made sure I showed up. I was tired. I didn't want to eat. I looked like crap. I mean, I was 4 shades darker, by the way, because of the chemo situation. I was like, my mouth was completely dry, but I made sure I showed up. Why? Because if you hand over your power in any situation over to someone, you lose the ability to self-motivate yourself. So I made sure, as much as it was 13 people deep, and as much as I felt self-conscious, I made sure that I was present for them because we were in it together. It wasn't them just healing me or giving me medicines. It was me working with them so that we could actually get through it together. And that was super important. And then the last part is, we all know about resilience, but I like to use the word adaptive resilience. In the moment when I was in the SHIT, when I was in that pain and that sorrow, how can I remain flexible? How can I create strategies? How can I find new ways of thinking and moving and being that can illuminate my next steps forward? And so those I think are elemental to anything. Mine's happen to be cancer. It could be a breakup. It could be a business failure, anything. But those are really, really major keys. And so when I deal with healthcare leaders especially, it's that mental cognitive fatigue, that mental cognitive overload. It's this ability to gain clarity, but not really, to gain composure. And it's a silent pain that they're carrying. I can feel it. I can sense it as someone who's not only worked with them, but someone who's now in the system and has seen it now twice. I know how it is.
Exactly. And so, Savio, when you talk about these 4 key elements that are important to carry forward, this is not just what I'm going to just assume that these are 4 key elements that we should probably incorporate into our lives when things are going well also, right? Like making sure that we have those moments of stillness, of quiet, that you can actually just think, just to process and get through.
100%. Because at the end of the day, they can actually sharpen you as a person, as a leader, as a partner, as a family member. whatever context it is, but it doesn't always have to be a devastating need for this. This isn't a 911 type of a situation.
No, exactly.
It could be something that can actually add to your awareness, because at the end of the day, and if someone who has faced life and death situations, right? I faced it twice. You think to yourself, besides the fact that did I create any meaning in my life, right? They did a survey. They asked people who are nearly at their deathbed what was most important. No one really said the fact that they were a millionaire. Everyone said, did I matter? Did I forgive? Did I allow? Did I let in? That's what most of them really care about. And coming from someone who unfortunately had to face that, but fortunately the perspective was given to me, so I'm happy about that aspect of it, is that you realize at the end of the day, the matter of our connections with one another is really that thing that keeps us forward. Because what's the worst thing that can happen to us? We could sort of die alone, right? And I think it's sad when you allow only a tragedy to have that illuminate for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I'm just here to tell the story of my own and see if that resonates with anyone.
Absolutely. Well, Savio, you're not just sharing your story. As you mentioned, you're working with CEOs and CMOs right now on a project that it sounds like you're coming close to wrapping up. You're on the tail end of this project. I am. Can you give us some insight? Or are we allowed to learn a little bit about it?
Well, if you want data, the data basically is that the U.S. at this point, every year we lose about $760 to $935 billion in healthcare waste. Where do you think that starts from? That doesn't start just from the fact that we have advances to tech and equipment. That starts with the human that's organizing and conducting and assessing and allowing. So that was pretty big. This other one interview that I did, and actually was just released on Wednesday, was the human side of it. She deals with the palliative care aspect of it, as a CMO. And she says, do you really think that my 86-year-old patient can't even text, and you want her to use AI? Mm-hmm. How is that possible? That's not going to serve her well. She doesn't know what to do with that. That doesn't help her.
It's even a stretch to ask them to download an app, right? Like, let's just be real. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. My dad knows how to do like two things. He knows how to go to Facebook, which is like amazing. Like that, like he cares so much about Facebook. And then he knows how to call, you know what I mean? And like texting,
that's it.
Like maybe it's like a word he'll text, like, okay, or bye, like, okay.
Yes, exactly.
So, but yeah, it was fascinating because for me, I wanted to understand, as a journalist, I want to understand. As a keynote speaker, I want to translate. And so you have to go in where people are actually talking this language. Yes, we all want to adopt AI. Look, listen, I'm a journalist. You don't even know. I'm part of groups, and one of them in particular, they are like purists. They're like journalists who are purists. And they're like, oh no, I would never use it. Or they're like, I feel guilty for using it. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. Mm-hmm. I don't care what it is in life. If you feel guilty about anything in life, you need to really assess to see why you feel that guilt. Because it's not a positive element. If you're actually using that word, I don't care what it is. And so I think with AI especially, it's a tool. So use it, see where your boundaries are with that. And that's it. You don't have to feel guilty for using a tool. As long as you're not hurting yourself or others. What did the musical Hair teach us? It taught us that phrase. Are you hurting yourself or other people? If you're not, then live your life freely.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's so interesting. I am finding myself in that exact same conversation in this season of life because I consider myself to have been a late adopter to AI. I'm 6, maybe 8 months in. It's not running any hours of my day right now, right? Like people are programming it to do so much. I also have a daughter that is in her senior year at college, and she is she has that same thought process where she's not going to utilize AI. If she just wrapped up her capstone project, and I said, "Oh, well, just drop that in, and you can, put some refining touches on it." And she always shoots back. She goes, "Or I could just sit and think about it for a minute." And I said, "Or that you can do that as well." So I'm seeing how that is still present. a lot of what is shared and expressed, I think, from the AI standpoint is that everybody's using it for absolutely everything. But there are some individuals that still want to honor the integrity of creation. But the purist, I'm going to say it took some time. I am here. I understand. It's a tool. We can utilize it as a tool.
My thing with the purists, and don't get me wrong, I love my purists as well. Because
I do as well. It's
they're part of my journalistic family. Okay, so no hate to the purist journalists.
Yes.
Okay, but at the end of the day, it's like I liken it to this. If you still want to ride in a buggy with a horse, then you ride in a buggy with a horse. But if you want to ride in a circular wheel or some tire, like a car, then you ride with that. You still have to be responsible when you're in the car or the buggy, correct? The horse can run astray, and you can drive really fast and kill somebody. So at the end of the day, you have to still be responsible. The human element still has to be there. But I mean, so much so I'm part of a group. So I've been writing on Substack for over 5 years. So I was an extremely early adopter. And right now people are actually writing disclosures on their Substack, like literally like page long disclosures explaining their use of AI. Or some people are putting a badge and saying created with human intelligence, which I think is easier. But I don't need to explain myself for creating information and content that is meaningful to me and to my audience, especially when the research, at least at this point, points to the fact that if you use AI, you should use it in the sense of writing it yourself first and using it to fine tune, just like an editor fine tunes an article. Absolutely. And to fine tune it. That's the best way, because that way you don't degrade the intelligence. You actually upgrade the intelligence.
You're
and so
that. Yes.
I think that's the best way to do it, but to each their own, and that's it.
Absolutely. It takes many to make this world go around.
Absolutely.
Yes. I love it. Savio, you are also a best-selling author. Tell us a little bit about your book. And if you have another that's in the work, we'd love to hear about that too. We like to get all the tea here as well.
So that book was written about 4 years ago. And basically, this was before my relapse. I interviewed 200 cancer survivors, different walks of life, different cancers, different ethnicities. And I took 35 of their stories, told my own. And the book is called I Survived Cancer, Here's How I Did It. 35 cancer survivors share their journey, and fortunately became a bestseller. But to me, that wasn't the most important thing, to be honest. The most important thing was that it resonated, and I made sure and I wanted them to promote themselves at the end of the book. And they're like, what do you mean? Because it was a compilation of my interviews. They're like, why would you want us to do that on your book? I'm like, because I want people to know that you're living, that you're breathing, that cancer wasn't the end of you, that they can look you up and you're still doing. It doesn't have to mean a death sentence. And so that was what the book was. Another book is germinating from this experience. And it really is this idea that, once again, which is my central thesis, that after the crisis, that's not the full story. The full story is how you lead at the beginning stages of it, the middle, and the end. Yeah. But the end doesn't really end because, as you know, things always creep up. And we're always kept on our toes, politically, socially, and technologically.
Exactly. We find that the quote unquote end is really just the foyer to the next, right? It's really just that arch that's going to take you into the next.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have touched on this, Savio, a couple of times, and I want to make sure that we really stress the importance of this with our listeners, especially our leaders. When we talk about like crisis or challenge, it's the beginning when we're in it and then coming out on the other side. Can you define what that means to you, and ideally how a leader should show up in all three of those key areas?
So this is part of my larger framework. I have something called the Adaptive Resilience Framework. And in it, it's really about noticing the early stress signals, noticing what those particular pivot points or the adversity or the problem area, and how you can navigate that, but also how you can clearly see that. Like, where does clarity form into that? And so I echo something that I talk about in my TEDx talk. So I did my TEDx talk about a year and a half before my relapse. A lot of this stuff was obviously before my relapse, but and in it, the TEDx talk is called 7 Minutes to Wellness, How to Love Your Inner Stranger. And people are like, inner stranger? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, well, what's that for you? I don't understand. I'm like, well, I left it vague on purpose. I said, but if you want to know, my inner stranger was that young person that never really felt completely rooted. I never felt completely grounded. Maybe it's because I always wanted to go to space. I don't know. But
that was still in there. That was still lingering.
Yeah,
yes.
I think so.
Yes.
And so much so, someone from high school used to call me nomad. I mean, it wasn't a positive, but he used to call me that because I was friends with a lot of people, but I just never felt grounded. And so she's like, oh, I get it. My inner stranger is that perfect idealized businesswoman that I can never reach, or that perfect mother that I want to be, or that sibling that I just can't seem to embody. Yeah. She goes, I get it. And so in the TEDx talk, I have a little sort of mini framework within it. It's called the Aloha Reboot. And Aloha, as we know, means hello. So it's a hello to your inner self. And so the acronym is very simple. It's A is acknowledge. So acknowledge where you are. Don't pretend. Like for me, I was in the hospital. This was happening to me. I'm not, it's not a pretend. Like, yes, I had scan anxiety. Yes, I didn't want to go through it. But what are you going to do? You're faced with this mountain. Are you going to climb it, or are you just going to stay at the base? That's the end of the day. So acknowledge where you are. L stands for listening. So in Hawaiian, there's a healing modality called huna healing. And in huna healing, they believe that the body not only sends us sensations, but actually has language. It has intelligence. It has consciousness. And so they believe you can actually talk to your body. It might not give you words, but it actually will give you information. It'll give you wisdom. And so I don't expect people to do it in front of other people, but talk to your body. I call it the three brains, the head, heart, and gut. And so you can actually have that language with your body. O stands for open. So open yourself up to this information. Whatever your belief system is, you're not doing anything that deviates from that. You're just opening yourself up to information. So just be okay with that. H stands for harnessing. So harness this information, make the mental connections, make the mental notes, think what works and what doesn't, because not everything will work. And then A is the most important, is act from that part. And I always use a caveat. You need courage. So act with courage for that, because a lot of the evidence and the data and the trainings that I've learned is this idea of the trans-theoretical model of change. It basically is the stages of change. And what it posits is that it's not that people don't want to change. They just don't know how to. They don't have the tools. They don't have the knowledge. They don't know if they're contemplating it, pre-contemplating it, wanting to do it, then they do it and they want to relapse. So they need to be assisted, whether that's a coach or a mentor or a therapist or a consultant. That's it. So it's called the Aloha Reboot because it's really about 7 minutes to just get back to self again. And it works every time because it's extremely short time. It's very time sensitive. And then it also has kind of a playful touch to it. And it's something that's going to ring true to a lot of people, because who doesn't want to get to know themselves better?
Exactly. I love that. Well, Savio, I will tell you, there was probably a season in my life that I, like that 7-minute Aloha piece would give me anxiety, because I was in a season where I didn't want to get to know myself, because as we talk about like knowing that invisible inner person, like who is that person that doesn't exist, right? The person that we don't know. And all of the things that you described were things that I went through and that I'm continuing to grow through in my own personal journey, is wanting to be the perfect mom, wanting to be the perfect leader, wanting to be the perfect sibling and the perfect child. Perfect child is probably the one that has kept me caught up the longest, because it's so deeply rooted. So I know there may be a listener out there that 7 minutes to spend with yourself may seem like a long time, but this reboot, it's very much introspective and it's directional, right? You know, let's figure out where we are. Are we going to make sure that we can listen to what's happening within us? Are we going to open ourselves up? Right? So it's very directional, so you don't get caught in the spiral, because I think the fear is if we spend too much time with ourselves and we don't know who we are, we start to spiral into that space, right? Because Who the heck are we? And what do you want?
Yeah.
Yes.
And like I tell people, it doesn't have to be 7 minutes complete. It could be A 1 week or A 1 day and then the L the next day. This is a discovery of self. And just as long as it took you to bury some of those things, it's going to take you a long time to unbury those things or to unearth those things. So give yourself some grace, give yourself some patience. And the first key into all of this is the willingness to want to even explore that. But I think we live in a world, and we talked a little bit about this, is that even now creating content, because AI can spit it out so quickly and so fast, that people want to see the human relational aspect. Literally today, just before you and I got on, I was on a call, and it was with a Stanford professor lecturer, who's also my mentor, and also a Harvard professor lecturer. And they were talking about how before filler words were something that no one wanted. Ahs, you know what I'm talking about, that sort of thing. But now people are appreciating it because it gives a leverage that something authentic happened, that conversation was real. It was true. And for me, it's interesting because when I did the TEDx talk and people had viewed it, they're like, oh, you did such a great job, And of course, we're always hard on ourselves. But I'll tell you truthfully, right now, that was all memorization and embodiment. So I use something called Story Palace, where you basically know, well, it's called Memory Palace, but you basically know where you are. And because for me, needed to know all the words. And when I would flub, I would mess up completely. But I will tell you truthfully, Natalie, right now, after this relapse, I am not that speaker anymore. No way, no how. I am an impromptu speaker who knows where I'm going with my story. Otherwise, it's just the conversation, and no one's going to appreciate that. We have a goal of dealing with leaders here. They're paying me a good amount of money. But that's not the type of speaker. And I think that resonates with people because it allows them to feel that they themselves can be expressive and not have to be so buttoned up.
Absolutely. Which takes us back into that spiral where it's, I have to be the perfect leader. I have to be the perfect CEO and whatever that looks like. And you get in your own way of truly being authentic in who you are. And authentic is, I think it's a subjective term. You can just define it and own it however you wish. But truly showing up in a way that the people that are aspiring or gravitating to you, the reason that they gravitate towards you to begin with, making sure you don't lose that essence. Like, that's key while we're striving for quote unquote perfection. And disclaimer, you never get there. So if you're listening to this, surprise, I'm sorry. We gave it away.
It ain't possible, y'all.
It's not possible. I also had a little bit of a flashback as you talked about like the ums and the ahs and the filler words, because one of my summers I spent at a speech camp at the University of Houston in Texas. And the professor and I was in high school at the time, and the professor that ran that camp had a buzzer and a big, this is going to age me, the VHS camcorder at the back of the room. And whenever there was a filler word used by any of the students that were participating in the camp, he would buzz and it's helpful. I'm grateful now, but he would buzz his little buzzer to let us know that we've used a filler word. Anything short of a fire breaking out in the back of the room, I am not going to be distracted by anything that happens in this space when I'm speaking because of that. I mean, there's nothing that will take you out of your thought process quicker than like a buzzer going off in the back of the room because you've used a filler word. But now I won't feel bad because some of those have made their way back into my vocabulary over time, and I'm okay with it.
And the best part about that is that you're not caught up in this cognitive overload of data. Like, yes, we want to be accurate. Yes, we want to give actual concrete data. Yes, we want it to be evidence-based. Yes, but you have to rely on the fact that you know that information, that it's so embodied within you that you know it, that you don't have to be caught up in it. Because when you're caught up in it, then all your mental energy and acuity is focused on that rather than just being sort of real. So are you having a chat or are you actually giving a lecture? Now, if you're giving a lecture or a presentation, that might be different because most people, right, they look at look at the slides and they talk about the slides. That's different. I'm talking about an actual keynote where you're actually trying to not motivate or inspire, because the evidence is that only lasts a certain distance. You want to actually move them to create some type of transformation or change within their life. And transformation is another buzzword people like to use and reuse. But what is transformation? Yes. What is transformation? Transformation is the ability for you yourself to go through some kind of mechanism that forces some lever within you to see, feel, think differently. That's what transformation basically is. So if a speaker can do that, or if a book can do that, or if your mama can do that, whatever can do that is whatever can facilitate
then that's
that.
What you need in that moment for that transformation.
Yes, 100%. And I think that's the key with generally with how we have to move forward with this new, this AI is not a joke. Like, it is amazing the amount of progress we could make in medicine, we could make in just some of the natural sort of aspects of our lives. It's fascinating. I'm studying it, not full force. I'm not at this point allowing agents to do things for me because I don't trust the system at the moment. It's too nascent. It needs to be tested further, but I think it can create a lot of positive outcomes for a lot of people who are at this point in a very vulnerable situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Savio, this has been amazing. I'd love to give you the space to share with our listeners, what are you working on now and what's to come? What's on the horizon for you?
So a book is percolating, which I haven't really completely refined it fully, but it's percolating. But right now really is my keynotes, because I really do believe, because I was silent and stifled for those 16 months of treatment. Granted, it was something I chose to do. I took myself out of everything. I communicated with friends and family, but I didn't do any work because I think sometimes you need what I call a spiritual exile, and the hospital was exile number 1, and this was exile number 2. I think you need that in order for integration to actually fully take hold of you. And so keynotes, I have a few spaces still left in 2026, is really important because it trickles not only from the person and their team and the organization, it trickles to the community, the family, the partner, and everyone else. So that's really important because the voice can create resonance with people and allow them to come in. I'm continuing my interview series. All that can be found on my website, saviopclemente.com, SAVIOPCLEMENTE. They can look at my keynote work. They can actually see my TEDx talk. And then, like I mentioned, every Wednesday I have a Substack newsletter called The Human Resolve, where I talk about the 3 brains, head, heart, and gut. And I do a synthesis of my interview series as well. And on social media, at every platform, I'm at The Human Resolve. And why The Human Resolve? Because hope is always a good thing. As the great movie Shawshank Redemption says, it never dies. And so I think we always have an opportunity for resolution and resolve, even if it's hard and there is a barrier in front of us. I'll give you a quick example before we sort of end. I have a sibling who lives in California who's on the complete opposite side of me when it comes to political beliefs. Before the cancer relapse, I was definitely very strident in what I knew to be true, what I knew that wouldn't hurt or disenfranchise another person. That you're never going to move me from. And she's very set on her ways. And I realized through this is, well, what can we agree upon now? We both love our parents, they're still alive, so we can talk about them and their welfare. We can talk about travel, which I love to do, although my 2 other travels coming back weren't so great. But and we can talk about food. So we talk about that.
Beautiful. Finding that common ground. We're going to stay in this space. We know that this space where we have our beliefs and we stand strong in that space. But what can we come to a common area and have discussion and still maintain a healthy relationship with one another?
100%.
Yeah, I love that. Savio, I ask my guest to share one thing as we wrap up each episode, and I'm going to pose the same question to you. 70 years from now, when people are thinking of you, Savio, as a leader, how do you want to be remembered as a leader?
I want to be remembered as someone who really tried to take life's challenges as not opportunities to always overcome, but opportunities to fashion the core element of why we're all here. I really believe that connection is really the reason why we all share this giant rock floating in space. I think connection is the reason why we have problems with one another, but why those problems can be transformed into solutions. And I think connection really allows us to feel not only that we care for one another, but that we care for something greater beyond ourselves.
That's beautiful. Oh my gosh. Thank you. I am grateful for our connection, Savio. I am so honored that our paths have crossed. I am so honored to have you on as a guest. And we only touched the tip of the iceberg. We also have, as we were prepping for today's episode, there's some other phenomenal people that you've had an opportunity to interview and talk with over the years. We'll just have to bring you back and hear those stories too.
We'll do that. I'm always game.
I love it. Savio, thank you for taking the time out to join us today. And thank you for taking the time to share your insight. So many valuable nuggets. And so I hope that the leaders, the aspiring leaders, those solopreneurs that are out there listening to these episodes, that you have those takeaways. We would love to hear from you. So if you have questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, reach out to us. Savio Searchable, he's on Instagram. You can find him on his website. And you can always connect with us at theleadershipthatshines.com. Until next time, we will see you all soon. Thank you for spending time growing with me on the Leadership That Shines podcast. Every episode is built around the values of impact, influence, and growth. And I want all three of those to show up in how you lead starting this week. If this episode added value to your week, share it with a leader in your world who is ready to grow. Subscribe and follow so that you never miss a week. And I'll see you in the next episode.